Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 33 of my Pyanodon's playthrough. In this episode, we are going to start making electric assemblers, which will dramatically improve our factory's ability to make things. Enjoy. We still need to chop up all these fish to get the fish oil, but there's not a whole lot of point to doing that right now. It looks like the lights are turning on because it's starting to get darker, but there's not a lot of point to doing that right now until we have populated this system, because it will be exponential growth, so we really don't want to pull the fish off until that has happened. And it is cool that there is a different graphic, so when the building is running, you get the fish swimming around, and when it's not running, the fish are removed, and that's just really good Factorio building design. So instead of it just pausing with the fish not moving, they disappear. But we just gotta let this run its course. There's not much we can do here. And I changed the scheduling slightly by adding a separate empty cargo here. That way when it arrives, it will dump everything it can. And then the item that we calculated to run out first is the thing that it's checking. And then when it does, it will try one more time to empty its cargo and then do the loop. It's still going. It looks like these first machines are still monopolizing the fish eggs, but not much you can do there. And we can't really continue until we have that fish oil, so let's do some more research. And of course, the thing that we are going into is Assembly 2. And this is an interesting technology tier because you actually do get better burner assemblers. So in Pi, the vanilla Factorio assemblers are all burners. So this recipe allows us to add our higher tech materials to a Mark 1 burner assembler, and now we get a Mark 2. And it doubles the crafting speed from 1 to 2. And also it does something very interesting if you look at the accepted fuel at the bottom. Factorio populates that list dynamically based on the fuels you currently have recipes for. And note that all of the canned fuel recipes are there. So that means that with a burner assembler 2, you can actually run it on liquid fuel if you want to. And that saves you from having to deal with ash. However, what it doesn't save you from dealing with is empty canisters. So you're still gonna have to do something with those. So that's essentially the same as ash, but you could. However, I am a strong proponent of just going straight to the Pi description of it is the automated factory, but I think of them as essentially electric assemblers. A large factory able to make more complex products. So as a slight history lesson to Pi, it used to be that the burner assemblers had limits on how many ingredients they could process. So in other words, how complex the recipes are. And that was the advantage of the automated factory, is that it did not have limits on ingredients. And they removed those limits. That you can kind of see the remainder of that when it says it can make more complex products. But there's two things going for the automated factory. Well, one, it doesn't have any ash. It is a 2 megawatt building though, and it's only a crafting speed of 1, so it's only as slow as the tier 1 burner assembler. And it goes from 75 kilowatts to 2 megawatts. It's a huge jump, so efficiency wise it's not really worth it. But what it does allow is you to get more inserters on it, because most of our builds are actually inserter limited. Like pretty much our entire minibus here is inserter limited. You can kind of tell the places that aren't when we have more than one assembler, like right here. Now I think this might have actually been inserter limited too, but there's actually very few builds that are assembly limited. So getting access to more inserter slots is a very valuable thing. And also this technology tier is a very important crossroads for your factory. So if you go down a little bit lower, you can actually get trains, and their recipe is a little complicated, but you certainly can make them. So if you wanted to do a rail base, this is basically the earliest that you can do it. And I don't think I'm going to do a rail base, at least nowhere close to this point in time. I think we can at least get to 500 hours without actually doing any rail basing, and we may never actually need to do it at all. But nonetheless, whenever you want to do a big change to how your factory is set up, the longer you go without making that change, the more things you'll have to change when you get there. So it's important to think, what is your end goal for the factory, and deciding when it's time to put a ton of work into sending your factory in that direction. And since I don't intend on doing rail basing, at least anytime soon, I don't think we need to worry about that. However, the automated factories do significantly change the way that products are made, simply because the buildings are bigger. But we also have another limitation. Our minibus here can only run on 7.5 plates of iron and copper, and we could produce easily 27 iron plates if we wanted to. So this is really limiting, and you don't see it right now, but the spare parts almost use all of the iron just by itself. So this minibus is becoming increasingly limiting to our factory, and we don't want to really commit to putting more things on the end when it's obviously outdated. So we're actually at a crossroads here, and I believe that the path leads towards a main bus. And a main bus in Pi is a little different than vanilla Factorio. Because there's so many different types of items that you would need, it's not the same as just put every item on the bus and deal with it. And in fact, that's not even really practical. However, really the next way of manufacturing things is logistics bots. And they are well into the next technology tier. So looking at all of the things that's between us and it, it's quite a bit. We're going to need to go some amount of time before we get to this point, and I think relying on this minibus will be impractical for that purpose. So I guess I'm using all these words to say that I would like to use the automated factories to build a main bus and change the direction that our factory is expanding. Not in a literal sense, but a figurative sense. So the automated factory requires a bunch of random stuff. The main things is the gearbox and the shaft. The gearbox requires that fish oil and some things, including more shafts. And then the shafts require a bunch of stuff, but the main thing here is the iron nextlet antimony special alloy. So many words. So to make automated factories, we're going to start to use our smelting build in earnest. And this also gives you the ability to make brakes, which do require vitriol, but right now we don't need them for anything, so we don't need to worry about it. So we'll hit that. We could research trains too, I suppose, but I kind of want to wait until we would need them for something. Right now, the main thing we would have used it for is antimony because it's going so far. And it actually wouldn't be the worst idea in the world to make a train. That would save us that huge belt, but it's already there is the problem. So it would save us these 2 slots here. So I kind of want to wait until we would want those slots, not to mention that making rails is actually kind of grindy. So it might make more sense to wait until we have our main bus set up before we do any train stuff. So how are the fish going? Well, they're going. Things always go slow when you're watching them, but it's expanding. We just got to give it time. And I guess I'll take this opportunity to lay some bricks down. I don't know if I've pointed it out, but to do so, I've got these chests here. I guess we can actually just put one building here instead of doing the 3 chests. That would be slightly more convenient. So right there, I just dump all my stuff in there and then grab the tile related things and then start picking things up. So we've got our supply of concrete that is slowly being drained, and then our refined concrete, which we have a lot of. And I just go by grabbing all the things that we would need, like limestone, the asphalt, and down here we have the iron oxide tiles. And then I try to remember what was the last place that I was paving with that tile. So we were doing iron oxide here. So I just go up and down and I wait to place the refined concrete until these others are placed, because the refined concrete is already here and we're gaining more of it by replacing it with these other tiles. And asphalt has been slowly expanding along our tar processing build and all its related processes. Limestone we can actually make in any quantity that we want. I'm just avoiding doing too much of it because otherwise our entire factory would just be limestone. So I think I was placing it down here. I have upgraded limestone to also include ore processing builds in addition to alien life. Quite a lot for one tile type, but they're so easy to make and we have so many of them that it's hard to say no. And then once I'm left with a bunch of refined concrete, then I can decide where to just pave normally, and I try to pick builds that haven't gotten the concrete yet. And also I try to take this opportunity to chop up any rocks or trees that were covered by concrete just to clear it out. If we weren't on an ice map, I probably wouldn't be doing this because it would take too much time, and eventually we would have robots which can do it for us. But since there's not too much of it, I don't mind just manually getting rid of things. It does make it very clear where they are once you've put down the concrete. And I think Pi is a little different, where by default, Factorio will leave a few doodads on the map after you've placed concrete, so like weeds and things. And the better concrete has less weeds. but nonetheless, even refined concrete has some. But in Pi, all of the tiles you put down completely get rid of the weeds, so it makes it super obvious where the trees and rocks are. And when in doubt, I just keep making a square of concrete across the factory like this, and eventually everything will be covered. It is kind of time consuming to be placing concrete, although considering how many thousands of items it takes to pave your factory, it's actually very fast when you look that it takes like a second and a half to place 1,000 concrete. That's very fast. If we waited for robots, they would take forever to place the smallest amount of concrete. So even when you have robots, generally it's just easier to place concrete down manually. And then once all of the concrete is placed, I will take the extra tiles and put them in their dumps. So in the case of bricks, I just place them in the brick dump chest and save 1,000 for our uses, and then they'll go to where they need to. And the concrete will go in the concrete building, and then saving 1,000 for our own uses, and it will get turned into more refined concrete. And then any junk, such as stone, can go in there, and then back here, pick up our stuff, and that's how I pave the factory. Okay, research is done. How are fish doing? They're progressing. In fact, it's actually going pretty fast. First, we only had 2 machines going, and now we have 6. So we are definitely starting to get our exponential growth. So let's do a build for gearboxes and shafts. And this is actually kind of important because right now, the only machines we can make are burner assemblers. If we're going to be immediately making the advanced assemblers, why not plan this build around the advanced assemblers instead? It will be a good opportunity to see how the holy trifecta of technologies that we've researched will work. And that holy trifecta is medium power poles, long-handed inserters, and of course, the automated assembler. So we'll say the final output is gearboxes, and we'll switch it to the automated assembler, and just say that's default from now on. And also we will need the shafts. Most of these things our factory already makes, but the one thing that it doesn't is solder, so we'll need to make that as well, and we'll probably make it on site. Need to set this. Make sure they're all in the automated factories. There we go. Then we'll come in here so we can set an intermediate. And it's interesting that the burner assembler is in production, but you have to go to coal processing to get the automated factory. And we need them in equal quantities. So let's just make it the same here. And of course, this is way too much. It's just a lot of everything. So let's go way down to 0.1. And you can see it's still a big build, but 0.1 is exactly one automated factory for gearboxes. So that looks good. You can see we have very close to a 2-to-1 ratio for solder, but specifically that we need way more shafts than gearboxes. And it's important to note that. So we need to make a bootstrap build to make our first automated assembler, and then from there we can start making more. Because this is one of those chicken or the egg questions here. And we may just want to manually grab a fish, or even a couple fish, just to have enough to start this process. So we'll do a bootstrap here, where we want the fish, and we don't care, just one chest for all the junk. So looking at this, it actually renders 8 fish at a time. And there it goes. That'll be enough to get started. And then we can just dump the extra fish back into the system. And then from here, we'll make an assembler. And we could do the burner assembler 2s, but I kind of don't want to upgrade our factory with them if we're not really going to use them in any quantity. Because the burner assembler 1s do actually go into a few buildings that we make right now, like the ball mill and the rectisol. However, burner assembler 2s do not. Now they do eventually. Of course they go into burner assembler 3s, but they go into the jig concentrator and also the Mark II moss farms. But we might be holding on to those burner assemblers for a long time. So I would rather just not deal with them. So instead, we'll just use burner assembler 1s. The efficiency is the same between them, where it's twice as fast and has doubled the energy consumption. So other than them being faster, there's not much of an advantage. And we're gonna need some fuel, so let's just grab coke because it lasts a long time. This is really only going to run a few times, just enough to get our first few assemblers, and then those assemblers can make the gearboxes so we can just craft the rest in our inventory. We've actually been perpetually short on steel for a long time that I haven't really brought it up, but this build has been going non-stop forever. Like this first machine here has made about 16,000 steel. So this build looked so big when we built it, but in reality, it's been going for like dozens of hours now, and I wonder how much that actually is. So looking at steel and the 50-hour mark, you can see that this is full blast, and it does go down sometimes, but it's been going full blast for at least 13 hours straight right now. So even looking at the 250-hour mark, you can kind of see where right around here, which I believe is when we started making refined concrete, that it's just been going. So I've been considering kind of doubling up our steel, but for now, I guess it continues. We haven't actually been short on it because what I've been doing is coming over here to concrete and just stealing some steel. And that has lasted up until now. And you can kind of see that this is a very slow craft. 50 seconds for this. It takes a while, so that's why we need so many shaft machines. And there we go. We've got our guts and our meat, which will decompose, but we've got skin and bones, which are new items, and they do not, so they will just sit there and wait. And we'll build a more official fish slaughterhouse setup once we've actually maxed this out, and it's actually very close now. That expanded quickly. It's almost going at full blast now. Is this done yet? So you can see why we actually kind of want to go hardcore on these, because it actually takes quite a long time to make these. So if it's just one machine into one machine like this, it is obnoxiously slow. Certainly we can make it faster with a Mark II assembler, but that'll be the same problem where it will now be polluting our inventory, and I don't want to carry it around or have it in a chest for hundreds of hours until we finally use it in some recipe. It takes so much energy to make this, we're basically getting 1 ash per shaft. So there it goes. It's now in the machine, so we just need the other things: steel, duralumin, and titanium. And there we go. This machine is much, much faster. It's only a 10-second crafting time. But there it is. 1 gearbox. But we need 2. So looking at our build, for this to work correctly, we're going to need at least 3 assemblers. The rest we can just plan with ghosts, and then as they start producing the resources that we need, we can start populating it. So it'll be exponential growth in mechanical form. And it's actually kind of funny that we did exponential growth with fish here, and then right after the fish, we're doing the same exact thing with materials. All right, there's our second gearbox. We'll also grab these 2 shafts, and of course now we need steel plates and things. So grab some back, and there we go. Now, how is that not an achievement? This has to be an achievement. It's such a huge change to how you do your factory, but oh well. So anyway, there it is. It's a big building. I guess it's moderately sized when it comes to pie buildings, but it's certainly huge compared to the burner assembler. And it makes whatever you want. The main advantage to these is how many slots they have. So because we have the big power poles, we can put them on the end and populate most of the slots. Not all of them, but most of them. So with the ones we have, we can do this. But if we had these smaller power poles, these 2 would be missing. And I think they actually wouldn't even reach. We would have to like put one in the center. So what we can do here is space them 2 apart like this, if necessary. And then we can fill up these 6 slots right here with inserters. And this is almost an entire yellow belt of input. So it means that one factory can basically take 4 belts of input if you need to without using loaders. So that is the main advantage to having them be so big like this. So we have our holy trifecta now. I've been waiting to upgrade our steel here until we had long-handed inserters. But nonetheless, I'm still waiting to upgrade it until it's actually seriously a problem. And so far, it is holding out. We've got our build here. And now we have to decide where to do it. Well, the alloy starts out here, so this is a prime candidate for it. And we want to look at the other resources we would want. And a lot of them are already here, which really helps. For example, we have the lead and the titanium. And of course, duralumin is made here as well. So if we built it here, that would save us a lot of logistics. I don't think we're going to be smelting anything new for a while here, so it should be safe to just stick this on the end. And we actually need to plan a build here. So the gearbox can go anywhere, but the other parts, we do want to try to make nice and clean here. It's kind of exciting. We have access to a new way of making things, and it's going to be so much cleaner now. So something like this, and now Instead of planning things in Hell mod, we can actually just select what the speed of the building is because they are no longer going to be inserter limited. So we can just inject however much we need to into each machine. So these will get 1 inserter each. Super easy. Fortunately though, we actually do need to have the machines in order to check their speeds. You cannot check it with just a ghost. We should have some more gearboxes ready though. Yep, we got 2 more. So there we go. Our second factory, and the 2 megawatt energy consumption is not insubstantial. That said, there's so many different types of Pi buildings that the number of them that are automated factories is fairly limited, so it's not too much of an issue. But nonetheless, it adds up. So looking at this, we've already taken care of 1 input, and now it's going to have 2 more, and then 1 output. So with long-handed inserters, this is super easy. So we have our input here, and then we can have our output there. And this is our repeatable pattern, so there's no reason to build it any further. We can pick it up and figure out where we want to put it. Well, we want to try to make it lined up with everything else. Sure, how about right there? Clear out the rocks, and do the same thing and flip it over. Oh, this is so satisfying. Like, you have no idea how long I've been waiting for this. I mean, you do have an idea. You've been watching the episodes, but it's 107 hours, 57 minutes, and 3 seconds. That I've been waiting to be able to finally make real builds. And here we are. And now we have our repeatable pattern. This is where the factory really begins, in my opinion, with Pi. Everything prior to this point was just early Pi shenanigans. Once you finally get these electric assemblers or automated factories, I keep forgetting the exact name, but you can actually do real legit builds now and be happy with them and not have it be crazy spaghetti. And how many of these do we need? I think I'll be okay with us having slightly not enough of them. So if we do 2 more builds here, and now this radar is going to be in the way. So we got to pull these power poles out, but that means we get to use the medium poles. So I am fine with that. So if we do this, we will have 16 factories, which is what we need. However, we will only have the 8 making the solder, which is not enough. However, if we come in here, it's still a ways away. We need to have logistics science, and you know, there's stuff between us and it. But when we get there, we will get a better recipe of making solder that is a molten solder recipe. And of course, anything that's molten produces the items very fast. This doesn't use castings, but nonetheless, it makes a huge amount of solder very easily. So at that point, we would be sending solder around the factory. And that means we could replace the assemblers with the actual solder itself. And then these other buildings would stay the same. So I think I'm fine with this, not to mention that this really isn't going to run that fast. I am just trying to make a nice, cool looking build, but it's really not that important that this is running at full speed. I think I would much prefer it to look good at this point than be perfectly balanced. You may disagree, but you're also wrong. Sorry. Because come on, this is already so much better than everything we've done up until this point. When I'm hand building things, I try to put the power poles down first, because then after that I can put the lights in, and this build probably is wide enough where putting 1 light in the middle will not be enough. So we'll need to put them here, and I try to position the lights in places that we can see them so we know that they're there. But I place the poles first, so then I can place the lights and actually be able to see what we're doing. But we're going to need to have a minimum amount of machines, so let's make sure we have 1 of every type, so it will be able to start exponential growth. Has it fully seeded? Oh yeah, look at that. We are fully seeded now. This does mean we can put 1 more machine in here, which is nice. It's interesting that the gearboxes and things are in the alternative energy mod, but that's where they are. Anyway, it goes through all of this. And finally, we have the shafts, which then need to be inserted in. And of course, we're going to have a bunch of other stuff we need too. And I guess we'll just go right over these outposts because they work just fine right in the middle here. Moving outposts is actually kind of annoying because you can't shift them. So they're going to stay. Because if I removed it, then I would have to update all of the caravans that go to it. And I'd rather not. And the last thing we need here is actually getting the fish oil. And can these power poles reach the whole distance? Unfortunately, no. These are extremely large buildings, so the speed of all these is pretty much exactly 1 inserter. We probably do want to have some kind of storage tank for them. I was going to grab our 15K tanks here, but actually, I don't think we need to, because the caravan depot itself is a tank. We would probably just want to have a pump in here to pressurize it and make sure it gets full. So there we go, we'd want to do something like this. We have already gotten some biocrud, so that seems to have worked correctly. Guess we'll find out later if some of it went where it wasn't supposed to, but at least for now it seems to be working. So there we go, this one can't eject its output because of that right there, so let's hook all this up where the bones and the skin get sent to be processed into biomass, and the actual useful stuff, meat and guts, is going to where they need to. And this outpost is starting to fill up, and it will take a while for that to happen. Okay, the junk made it here, so let's see it get sorted again. Of course, it would be much more efficient just to have one balancer sorting the stone away, but oh well. It is sorted this way, and it will continue. Eventually, all of these animal parts will not be sent on this belt, so I'm okay with it being like this for now. And all of the meat and guts have made it here, so what my plan is the meat and guts will go into this shed. Any meat will just be immediately pushed over into this outpost here, and the guts will wait in this shed until they decompose into the jerky, which will put them into this outpost, and then they'll immediately get placed into this one. So basically, like what's happening here, it's just a temporary buffer to give the guts time to break down. So we will absolutely be making a much better setup than this spaghetti here, but for now, this is how it'll stay. The animal junk made it up here. It's being technically sorted, but not really. We're just pulling away the spoiled flora. So now all of this goes in and gets processed. Who knows if this one building is enough? We'll just assume that it will be for now. I don't know though, it's actually building up, so maybe not. We perhaps want more. And like our meat with the rock setup, let's just tack something onto the end here. Unfortunately, the skin does not have different icons, but the bones do. And they're pretty neat. Kind of creepy with those skulls there, but yeah, there's skulls, there's spines, a lot of weird bones in there. But yeah, making tons and tons of biomass now, which of course goes back into the fish. So we are decomposing the fish parts and then making fish food out of it. But that shouldn't surprise you with Alien life, because that's the kind of thing that happens around here. Haven't checked on power in a while, but it needs to be a shorter time frame to be useful. But actually our factory is quite idle right now. Not much is happening. Of course that's about to change. Okay, then let's start hooking everything up. Let's do the tin and lead first. And there it goes. That's what it looks like. It's a pretty cool building. Not impressively fast or anything. That is not why we like them. We like them because no ash. But it's going, filling up these two machines. So let's hook up their resources right here. And in they go. Making the shafts. And of course, the recipe is very slow. And when the shafts get up here, oh, I was going to do a direct insertion, but let's put it into this chest instead. That way we have two separate chests to grab from. So there's the shafts. In they go. This will fill up the chest up to 100. And of course they will be pulled off to make our gearboxes. So now we need to get all of the gearbox resources in. There's those, the steel, and of course the fish oil. And there it goes. Let's put a condition on here that this will only go if we have, let's say, 10 shafts on there, just so we have a few that we can immediately grab and start turning into more assemblers. And now we can start our exponential growth with assembly machines. Sounds like a lot of manufacturing is happening right here. But yeah, we are rapidly expanding our output here. So yeah, you can see why I really wanted to build something like this immediately rather than something that was more patchwork, because it takes a long time to make these items. So it's just a lot easier if right from the beginning you just go hardcore and make sure you'll have enough. And because our factory was sized fairly aggressively, it means we can fully support this. Well, for the most part. I'm not so sure about the iron nexolite. Yeah, we're only making 1 a second. So eventually this will slow down at 1.51, but that's a problem for another day. I'm curious what our factory's power output will look like when this is going at full blast. It's not so much the assemblers, although it is a substantial amount, that this build is actually going to be about 52 megawatts. So it's going to be not nothing, but I'm more concerned with all of these other things that go into it. And there we go. Already, the automated factories are starting to creep up onto our top energy consumers list here. There we go, 6 more gearboxes, which means a couple more automated factories. More gearboxes, more factories. It is definitely feeling faster now. Automated factories are definitely climbing up the list. In the last minute, they're already the 3rd biggest energy consumer. And that's what we're gonna see. They do take a significant amount of power, but at this point generating a lot of power is pretty straightforward, so making electricity is not the problem that it used to be. And here we go, the last 3 machines, and now it's running at full speed. Now isn't that a sight to behold? I think it is. After dealing with so many Pi shenanigans for so long, it is absolutely amazing to have such a clean and normal build. I love it. And looking at our shaft box here, it now has more than 10 because the setup is running faster than the speed of this factory, which means it is running at full speed, making gearboxes as quickly as it can. Awesome. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we're going to use these factories to build a new main bus. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.